Hello everyone, Kaoz here, and welcome to another old school RuneScape video. You might have heard of a new somewhat difficult challenge in the game by the name Fortis Colosseum. I'm sure your YouTube feed is not absolutely spammed with these videos, so here I am to make my own guide on how to get your very first and possibly only dishonest Quiver in old school RuneScape. If you have never even tried the Inferno, for example, I will make your life easier by explaining everything I have learned over the past few weeks to make you more comfy in this new wave-based encounter. Boys and girls, if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe with notifications on and drop a like for the YouTube overlords. The Colosseum is quite intricate, so if you have any further questions, join our Discord with the link in the description. Before we start, some important disclaimers as always. As most of you know, even though I am the best Mexican player, I am nowhere near the top level. So if you're looking for speedrun strats, how to do this with a 50k budget gear and so on, this might not be the video for you. This is also not an absolute brain-dead player guide to the Colosseum, as I will not take you by the hand for every single possible spawn, and I assume you already have moderate to advanced game knowledge. Because, let me tell you, this challenge will have your blood pumping for a good while. More than a guide, you can see this as a Colosseum tip video, since I will give you as many tools as possible for success. That being said, let's begin. Let's keep the initial information short because we have a lot to go over and I don't want to make a 40-minute video. The only requirement you need to attempt the Colosseum is Children of the Sun to access Valimor. For levels, you could work with around the base 80s or 85s for the items I will recommend, but just like the Inferno, every bit of damage counts, so if you want a more realistic chance to beat this challenge, get minimum 95s or simply maxed out your combat stats. This is a minimum gear I recommend to do somewhat well in both of the waves and against the Soul Heredit. We will focus on melee items in that final fight, as well as weapons and armor to deal decent ranged and magic damage for a unique mechanic we will see in a little bit. You won't be doing too much magic damage without a shadow, so melee and ranged is your best bet. When I was starting to learn the Colosseum, I jumped in there with melee and magic to have some backup heals throughout the waves. But just like an SGS in the Inferno, doing that will only slow you down. I swapped out to melee and the range setup because the T-bow and the scythe absolutely destroys pretty much all NPCs. When you have more money for upgrades, prioritize the scythe with an Ultor ring and then T-bow Masori, because Torva doesn't really offer too much other than defense, so leave it as your last upgrade. You can get to the Colosseum by teleporting to Valimor and running east. After you earn some glory, you will unlock a Colosseum teleport in your Ring of Dueling, which takes you directly to the lobby. Get a plugin called Fortis Colosseum to remind you what monsters will spawn and what invocations you have active. NPC markers helped a whole ton, and ground markers for important tiles I will mention in a few minutes. Now let's go over the monsters and the invocations quickly so we can put it all together. On every wave, 3 Fremenic will spawn, each with a different combat style. If you attack the melee with mage, the ranger with melee, and the major with ranged, you will always deal your max hit. If you have an SGS, save special attack for the ranger to guarantee a chunky heal. They will always run towards you and move along with you, attacking every 6 ticks and 1 tick apart. When learning, it's nice to freeze them while you solve the wave. Starting with the other mobs, they all attack every 5 ticks except for the Manticore. The Serpent Shaman occupies 1 tile and attacks with Mage. That's it. This is by far the simplest out of all the monsters in the Colosseum, but can still hit pretty high. On waves 1 through 6, if you take long enough to defeat all enemies, a Jaguar Warrior will spawn. He attacks with melee and can deal 3 hits in a single tick. With bad luck, this guy can quite literally one-shot you. So move around the pillar to safe spot him until it's time to take him down. The Javelin Colossus attacks with ranged, and every 5th attack he will throw a javelin up to the sky. And a few ticks later, it will land on the position you were at. They have ridiculous vision range, so they are not as easy to outrun when you're in trouble. The Manticore is the first enemy of its kind in old school RuneScape. When they spawn, they will take a few ticks to charge up their attack after they see you. Green means ranged, blue means mage, and red means melee. The orbs will be launched every single tick, and they need to charge up before doing it again. The melee orb will always be last, meaning that the first one is a 50-50 between ranged and mage. It is extremely important to note that when 2 Manticores spawn together, they will not attack at the same time, meaning you need to time both of their volleys. The Shockwave Colossus is simply a stronger mage, and there's not much to it other than also having crazy range vision. They are extremely weak to all styles but can deal pretty crazy damage, so look at it as a glass cannon. Finally, starting on wave 7, a Minotaur will spawn halfway through and will chase after you. He will fully heal any other NPCs in his line of sight, so it is extremely important to safe spot him correctly, which we will learn how to do in a few minutes. Other than these, we have the final boss, which will have its own segment at the end. Now, time for the invocations, and I will also talk about them quickly because these are pretty self-explanatory, but I will tell you a few tips for each one of them, and my personal ranking at the end. Blasphemy drains your prayer depending on how much damage you take. Tier 1 drains 20% of damage taken, Tier 2 drains 40%, and the Tier 3 drains 60%. Relentless makes enemies never miss, meaning that they will ignore accuracy checks against you and deal extra damage. Tier 1 increases their max hit by 1, Tier 2 increases max hit by 3, and the Tier 3 increases it by 6. Frailty reduces your maximum HP by a set percentage, and you can no longer overheal with Bruise. Tier 1 reduces it by 10%, Tier 2 by 20%, and the Tier 3 by a disgusting 40%. Bees will spawn swarms of bees with 1 HP, and will respawn after a few seconds when you kill them. They can also poison you, but poison damage is pretty low. Tier 1 spawns 1 swarm, and the Tiers 2 and 3 spawn the same number of swarms respectively. Myopia simply reduces your attack range, but manually or auto-casting ancient spells completely bypasses this restriction. Tier 1 reduces your range by 2 tiles, Tier 2 does 4 tiles, and the Tier 3 does 6 tiles, which looks a little funny. Re-entry makes the Javelin Colossi leave molten sand where the spears land. Tier 1 leaves 1 pool of sand, and they will clear after every wave. Tier 2 will spread it to a total of 2 tiles, but molten sand is now permanent, and the Tier 3 will spread it to 3 tiles, also being permanent. Solar Flare will spawn orbs surrounding the pillars, and damage you if they hit you. Tier 1 makes them pretty slow, Tier 2 makes them faster and hit harder, and the Tier 3 makes them even faster, and they will also deactivate your prayer if they hit you. Volatility simply makes enemies explode a few ticks after they reach 0 HP. Tier 1 makes the explosion 1 tile larger than their size, Tier 2 makes it 2 tiles larger, and the Tier 3 has the same effect as 2, but will leave behind the molten sand which clears at the end of the wave. And it isn't permanent unlike Re-entry 2 and 3. Doom Scorpion makes a scorpion spawn on each wave, which will chase after you. If it hits you, it will apply Doom stacks, and by reaching 20 of these, you will die immediately. Tier 1 moves slow and applies 2 stacks of Doom, Tier 2 makes it faster and applies 4 stacks, and the Tier 3 makes it even faster, applying 8 stacks. From here on out, all invocations are single use and don't go up by tiers. Starting with Doom, when taking damage off prayer, you will get Doom stacks. This goes hand in hand with Doom Scorpion, applying Doom stacks as well, killing you if you reach 20. Dynamic Duo makes it so 2 Shockwave Colossi will spawn whenever they start appearing in the waves. Like I said before, they are pretty weak, but can make management more difficult. Red Flag will prevent you from safe spotting the Minotaur, and wherever you are, he will go crazy with the pathfinding and always end up next to you. Quartet makes a 4th Fremennik spawn for each wave, and the attack style will completely be up to chance. So, if you get double melees, you could get slapped for a double 40. Finally, Totemic will spawn healing totems when enemies fall below 50% HP. They have 1 HP, and you can deal with them pretty quickly, but can waste a lot of time if they heal enemies successfully. Now, 2 important things to note. When you pick new invocations, the game will prioritize higher tiers of existing invocations instead of new ones. So, if you get something like, let's say, Blasphemy 2, Doom, and Relentless, pick Blasphemy to quote-unquote re-roll the other 2 for the next wave. And second, as of the time of making and uploading this video, Jagex is proposing changes to a lot of invocations, which you can see on screen. So check out the pinned comment to know when they go live, if they make it to the game. My personal ranking from worst to best is Doom Scorpion, Doom, Totemic, Red Flag, Dynamic Duo, Beast, Quartet, Relentless, Re-entry, Frailty, Volatility, Solar Flare, Myopia, and finally Blasphemy for the best one in my opinion. You basically want to avoid invocations that are going to force you to move or move more during the wave, such as Scorpion, Totems, Red Flags, and Beasts. You also want to prioritize invocations that are not going to affect the final fight too much or at all, such as Relentless, Re-entry, and Myopia. The more you practice, the more you will know how each one affects the way you play. Let's now go over extremely important mechanics to give you the best success chance at clearing the Fortis Colosseum. Like I said before, to avoid making this video 40 minutes long, I will explain these tips concisely here, and you can check out the link in the description to watch a few completions I did on stream for the full wave breakdown. When you go in, import the tile markers from the Google Doc in the description. For the first wave, pick your invocation and pray Mage. Defeat all enemies, including the furry if you take long enough, and run to the tile that's labeled with Start. This is known as the B5 tile, and the green tiles marked around the arena are where enemies could potentially spawn. This is thanks to a Reddit post that figured out that by standing on this tile when monsters spawn, you are basically avoiding the chance for enemies to appear right next to you. So how does this work? When you are in the starting tile, pick your invocation and click confirm. The moment the screen disappears, you are going to count 5 ticks, or you can have a visual tick counter, and you're going to run to the pillar on your left. This makes it very common for monsters to simply stack on the other side of the pillar, and you will then have to deal with the Fremenics depending on their weapons. I one-shot the melee with a shadow, equip the Veni bow for the major, and activate Piety to kill the ranger with an SGS, and use a special whenever available. On later waves, you can get pretty spooned, but we will see how to deal with more spawns later in the video. When starting out, I recommend freezing them when you are next to the pillar and your character is able to see them, which will give you more time to plan the wave. You can also defeat the rest of them with Blood Barrage in case you need to heal. Remember that Quartet will make an extra Fermic spawn. From waves 1 through 6, the Furry will spawn later in the wave, and if you're on this pillar, you can safe spot him like so. Watch out with Solar Flare since the safe tiles will be directly next to the pillar, so even moving a single tile back will make him go after you. If you find yourself in a difficult spot, you can freeze him, and with enough practice you can also make it so it can start attacking you when other monsters are also on you, but on different ticks, such as a ranger if you have re-entry on. One of the most important solves during the waves is if 2 monsters are vertically stuck behind the pillar. What you need to do is stand at the center tile, pray against the monsters on the back, walk out, and then pray against the other one. If you are on the northwestern pillar, you will have to walk south, and if you are on the southwest pillar, you will have to walk west, and they will attack 1 tick apart. If you are in a situation where you have 3 monsters and the back one won't let you perform this safely, if you have a long-range weapon like a Bofa, Devo, or Shadow, you can go to the farthest tile down from the pillar, and the monster on the opposite end won't even be able to attack you. Keep in mind that this is only possible if the front 2 mobs attack with the same style. A simple tip involving the major is to try to move around if you have a weird stack. More often than not, the way other monsters will move around will change the stack to make it a little easier, and the mage can get unstuck to try to reach you. When the Minotaur spawns, remember that you have these 4 tiles to move around, so you can safe spot him if you don't have re-entry. When you have more monsters behind the pillar, move to the leftmost corner of the pillar so that the other mobs don't make the Minotaur get stuck behind them. If this happens, you will have to run out to free the Minotaur since it's the most important one to defeat past wave 6. If you have Blood Barrage, this is a great time to heal if you have taken heavy damage. These are the most important tips so far, but when everything else fails, you have to run to another pillar. If you are presented with an unsolvable wave stack, meaning that there's no way to deal damage without taking damage yourself, it is time to run south. Pray against whatever is going to deal the highest amount of damage, and wear armor to mitigate the damage you will be tanking. Praying correctly against manticores since they can hurt quite a lot. When you run south and you have many mobs on you, the way they move might make 2 of them attack you on the other pillar. Because of this, you can make it so 1 or 2 of them see you when you're nearing the other pillar, and because they will stay in place, monsters to the right will continue walking towards you, and one of them may make it around to attack. This is how you simplify the wave with dealing with monsters one by one, and you may have to run again in case the stack is garbage. But with practice, you will make it just fine. With all that being said, I'm going to include a bunch of links in the description so you can see all my successful runs on stream to see how I solved the waves in many different setups. But now, we are heading to the most important part of the Colosseum. Soul Heredit is the final boss in this new encounter. And not only that, he is now the strongest monster in the history of the game. He is weak to slash, so we are bringing our best melee items for this fight. As soon as you start, the following invocations will carry on to wave 12 if you choose them from waves 1 through 11. Beast, Blasphemy, Doom, Doom Scorpion, Frailty, Myopia, Relentless, Solar Flare, Totemic, and Volatility. Molten Sand left behind thanks to re-entry 2 and 3 will also stay on the arena, if a Javelin Colossi launched spears in the middle of the area. The most important invocation to watch out for is Quartet. When the fight starts, if you pick this invocation, a random Fremenic will appear, which you will have to deal with quickly. When this is done, time to deal with Soul's mechanics. As soon as you're able to, click on him so he doesn't move, since movement plays a big role in the fight. And if you're near a wall, it will make things more difficult. He has 2 basic attacks known as Spear and Shield. His first attack will always be Spear, and your safe tiles will be in the middle and near the edges of his area. From here on out, you will have to react based on his previous attack. If Soul attacks with Spear again, this time the 2 diagonal tiles will be safe, instead of the 3 for the first attack. When he uses Shield for the first time, all the tiles 1 space away from him will be safe. So, walk 1 square back. If he does back-to-back shield attacks, this time you will have to be 2 tiles away from him, since the safe squares will be farther away. So the key to the cycle goes as follows. Spear first, move back. If spear spear, move back diagonal. If spear shield, move back 1 tile. And if shield shield, move back 2 tiles. The key is simply remembering what attack was used previously, so you can react accordingly. It sounds easier than it is, but trust me, with enough practice, you will get through them no problem. Starting at 1300 HP and throughout the whole fight, the Soul Heredit will stop and summon beams of light which will leave molten sand behind. And this works just like re-entry. They will deal a bit of damage for every tick you stand on them, so avoid them as much as possible. Along the beams of light, crystals will start spawning and rotating around the edges of the arena, increasing in numbers as his HP goes down. When they stop, they will shoot a thinner beam of light across the arena, and a few ticks after, the crystals will shoot a projectile, dealing up to 70 damage in their path. This is probably the deadliest attack you will have to watch out for, as it deals incredible damage. Soul also has a triple attack where his spear will start glowing. Make sure you have Protect from melee off throughout the entire fight, because when any of these 3 strikes are launched, he deactivates your overhead prayer, and you won't be able to use it for the next attack. You must count to 3 ticks for you to reactivate your prayer, and turning it off for the next tick. Doing so for all 3 attacks, and when Soul is under 50% HP, the last attack will take 4 ticks to be launched instead of 3. The final attack is called the Grapple. Soul will announce that he will crush a part of your body, and you have a few ticks to unequip the piece of gear he shouted. Otherwise, he will deal massive damage. This includes your cape, body, legs, gloves, and boots. If you unequip the item during the final tick when he starts reaching towards you, you will do what's known as a perfect parry, and your next attack will guarantee a max hit. So, if you have a scythe or a chally, you can deal over 70 damage in a single hit. If you panic, there's no punishment if you spam click all the items in your equipment. Between all the special attacks, the basic hits will continue, and you will have to dodge them as you deal damage. Soul summons additional beams of light and crystals at 1100, 750, 400, and finally 150 HP. When you defeat the Soul Heredit, make sure to move away if you have volatility active, otherwise you might potentially skip out on your first completion. 2 tips that helped me immensely is that you want to go right back next to him after his basic attacks, because the farther you move, the less space you have to maneuver around. The second, and if you get hit by the basic attacks, stand on the exact same tile where you took damage, because it will pretty much be a safe tile for the next basic attack. When I started to remember this, my final boss fights were a lot more successful. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get your first Quiver in old school RuneScape. In terms of loot, I can't really give you an estimate GP per hour because loot can vary from under 1 mil GP per hour completion all the way up to 50 million GP and above if you land a lucky triple Echo Crystal roll, which I have personally seen before. Other than this, you obviously have the Quiver, which can be charged with Sunfire Splinters for the effect to work, the Tenol Sticks of Ralos to lower magic defense, Echo Crystals to make Echo Guardian boots, and the Sunfire Fanatic Armor, which now has the highest prayer bonus for their slots in the entire game. Don't forget that you have a 1 in 200 chance of obtaining the pet both from defeating Soul and by gambling your extra Quiver with a guy at the lobby. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed and you learned something useful. If you want to participate in our weekly Bond giveaway, leave a comment below telling me what you think of the Colosseum, if you have beaten it, want to try it, or if it's something you think you might never do. Include the term RSN and your username in the comments for me to pick a random winner on Friday. A massive thank you to all the legends that have decided to fund this amazing project I love so much, and all of your contributions go towards my starving family in a third world country. If you want to be part of this list of legends, click the join button below and see all the cool perks and rewards you can get in the videos, in the live streams, and of course in the Discord. Stay tuned for the next video, where we will go over all of the new training methods thanks to content introduced in Valimor, telling you the approximate XP and the GP per hour you might be making or losing with each one of them. For now, I hope you have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and I will see you then. Peace.